Hi Jody, it's Chris from Blended Schools, and I thought a video might help explain why this email error is coming up for your students. It's really just a permissions issue in Blackboard because every piece of content in Blackboard has a set of permissions that go with it. So when your user has files that they're saving in the content system, they can decide if they want to keep those files private or make them publicly available. So I believe there's just a setting that your student is unaware of that will allow this email to go through. So I have logged into my account and I've gone to my content area, which is how you're describing your student is getting to files. And your student wants to email a document or an assignment, a file, to his teacher. And so he's using the down arrow, and I'm going to use this document, it's a Word document, as an example. So what you're saying is the student is using the down arrow and choosing to email the item. And next, your student is entering an email address. And they can't just type in the box, they have to click the word to. Now, if it's a person who already has a Blackboard account, they could select a specific user. But if their teacher does not have a Blackboard account, then the student can add an email address. So this would be an email address for an external recipient. So it's not clear from your directions which way your student is entering the teacher's email address. So I'll try it both ways. I'll first assume that the teacher does not have a Blackboard account. So the student is trying to email the assignment to that teacher. So the student would click Add Email Address. Whoops. And they're entering an email address for that teacher, and you've indicated it's a Penn Trafford address, and that's fine. And the student's probably clicking Submit. They see the email address there, so they click Submit again, and now it's in the To box. So all is good from there, and automatically a link is added so the teacher can get to the assignment. Now when the student clicks Submit, this is where they're seeing that error that you've described, saying external users will not be able to access the resources. And it's not really an error. It's just letting you know that the student has not made their content publicly viewable. So that means if they're sending this file to a teacher who does not have a Blackboard account, this link will not work for the teacher on the receiving end. So if I click OK and then click Submit, the message will still go through, it just won't function for the teacher. Or the teacher may not receive the message at all if all that message contains is a link that will not function. So here's the reason that message is coming up. If you look at all of the files I have in my content area, one of the columns for these files is the permissions column. And by default, your content is protected, the content you upload to Blackboard. And so if you wanted to make it publicly viewable, you can change this permissions setting by clicking on the sharing icon. Okay, so I will demonstrate that, but before I do, let's look at that other option your students had. And that was if I use the down arrow and choose email item. Remember I said I wasn't real sure from your message whether students were choosing to add an email address for an external user or if they were using this Select Specific Users button. So let's take a look at what it looks like if they choose this Select Specific Users. They would use that if they know that their teacher has a Blackboard account. And they would have to know their teacher's Blackboard username. So I have a different user account that I'll enter for a username. So if I'm a student and I know my teacher's username, I can enter that here, click Submit, and it finds that teacher. My fake user is actually Sally Help Desk. And so if I'm the student and Mrs. Help Desk is my teacher, then I would click Submit. And now you can see that this message is going to a Blackboard user. And if I click Submit, some recipients will not be able to access some of the resources due to incorrect permissions. Now the message is a little different. It's recognizing that this is a Blackboard user, and it's saying, do you want to fix these permissions and send the email? So let's click OK. And it brings me back to my content area, and I'm going to change the permissions on this. So if I click the icon in the permissions column, I can see who has permission to view this item. Well, everybody in my one course is able to view it. I'm able to view it, and now Blackboard automatically added my teacher because in that last message I opted to allow her to view it. So she's now added to my list of people who are allowed to view this content. So I'm just going to click OK. I don't really need to change anything. Blackboard did that for me automatically. And also, Blackboard emailed, this is my teacher email account. So the email did go through automatically when I was prompted to fix the permissions and I clicked OK. It did two things automatically. It fixed the permissions and sent the email. Now that worked, and the teacher can click the link to view the assignment that I've emailed to her. But that only worked because the teacher had a Blackboard account. If the teacher did not have a Blackboard account, then the student would have to email her using that first set of steps that I demonstrated. But remember that the student will first need to edit their permissions to make sure that their content is publicly viewable. So let's just kind of back up and look at the permissions page again. Right now, these are the only people that are allowed to view my content, even if I share a link with somebody who's not in this list. But notice there's a Permit Anyone button at the top of the screen. So if I want to make this piece of content viewable to anybody, no matter whether they have a Blackboard account or don't, then I can click Permit Anyone. And then there's additional options, like you could permit anyone to overwrite the document or to remove it. In most cases, just read permission is sufficient. And then the student would click Submit. So now you can see that pretty much anybody is able to view this content. So I'll go click OK to go back to my content list, and let's look at how that icon changed. So here's that item I'm trying to email, and here's the permissions icon letting me know it's shared with everyone. So now let's try what the student was trying, and down arrow and email the item. And I'm guessing that the teacher doesn't have a Blackboard account, so the student would click To, and then they'll click Add an email address. And these are the same steps I tried in my first demonstration. So I'm going to submit that email address, and here it is, confirming with me that that's the email I want to send to. So I click Submit, and now let's see what happens when I try to send this email. Click Submit. This time, no error message. The email goes through. So your students should check a couple of things before they send their emails to their teachers. First, when they come into their content area, who is allowed to view their content? If they see an icon like this, it's sort of restricted. If they see an icon like this, it's publicly viewable. So, and of course it would only be publicly viewable to anyone who the student gives a link to. And that's what they're really doing when they email their teacher. They're giving their teacher a link. So what your student needs to do to make their content publicly viewable is click the permissions icon, and I'll do it to my next item, and then click the Permit Anyone button, and then Submit. Click OK, and then they can send their email. If your students are sending assignments this way to teachers who also have Blackboard accounts, there is a much more efficient way for teachers and students to set up and submit assignments. I'll wait to hear back from you, because before I go through the whole how-to on that, I'll wait to hear some details from you. My questions are, do the teachers who are collecting these assignments, do they have Blackboard accounts? First of all. Second of all, does this answer your question, and can you confirm once your student tries this that their emails go through? And once we hear back the answers to those questions, we can kind of take it to step 2. All right, Jody, thanks. I'm sorry if this got a little bit lengthy, but I hope it helps.